Everyone, Oli here, and this is my review of Shada. This takes on the original final story of the 17th season of classic Doctor Who, starring Tom Baker as the fourth Doctor. Shada is the 109th story overall and is written by Douglas Adams. If Shada had been completed, it would have been a six-parter. Because Shada was unfinished, it never aired on TV, and Douglas Adams reused elements from Shada for his book, Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, and scenes from Shada were reused in the Five Doctors, and that included the Doctor Romana haunting in Cambridge and the Doctor Romana taking off in the TARDIS. And of course, Shada was remade using some formats, such as a 1992 VHS release where Tom Baker narrated the incomplete parts, and that was released on DVD in 2013. A new version of Shada was animated for the 40th anniversary by Big Finish, but that pretty much featured Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor and Romana and as the President of Gallifrey, with Lala Wood reprising her role as Romana. And I think another version was made by Ian Levine, and he pretty much got most of the cast to come back, and except Tom Baker, I think he got to sound alike for that. And the most recent remake of Shada is this one, a DVD/Blu-ray release that was made in 2017. It was all aired in one part as one long movie, with the filmed scenes and the animated scenes to pretty much cover the scenes that weren't filmed. And so with this review, I'll be reviewing the 2017 release, and I'll probably do the Big Finish Shada when I review the Ordinary series of Doctor Who. And Shada is pretty much an era of sorts to Doctor Who, because it's the last story to be produced by Graham Williams and the last to use the 1967 theme tune. Because when season 18 comes in, as Doctor is entering a new era with a new producer, John Nathan Turner, it has like a new mood, new title opening, new incidental music. So the plot of Shada is as follows. When Chris Parsons borrows the book from an elderly university professor, he is surprised to find it written in a strange alien language. He's even more surprised when the book is revealed not to be of Earth at all. Chris is about to enter a world of invisible spaceships, monsters made of rotten rock, and computers that can talk. He'll also meet a man with a very long scarf who claims he can travel through time and space in the police box. So that's the plot of Shada. So, in my opinion, I think Shada is a brilliant story, and it's a huge shame that this story wasn't able to finish filming, and I do think that the animated version, the 2017 edition of Shada, pretty much did the original plot justice. The production was very well done. I liked the location filming of Cambridge, and it was very good, and I liked how Shada pretty much has like a City of Death feel to it, because one, it was written by written by Douglas Adams, and two, it pretty much uses the same incidental music as Shada, well, as City of Death. I mean, it's not the same, but it does sound very similar. I think the sets were quite good. We didn't see much of the set as was intended, but we saw how it would have been imagined in the animation, but it looks quite good. I wonder what Shada would have actually looked like if it was filmed, but they pretty much had to use the animation for it. But we did see, like, I think there is a picture on the internet of Shada as it was if the episode had aired. I think there was the filmed version of Shada, but then they pretty much really replaced it with the animated version of Shada in the animation, which was quite good. But I did like some of the sets, like Shada itself, Skagra's ship, and where the Krogs were. And no ship where the Krogs were. That's when Skagra and Romana were pretty much for at least the middle of the story. And I did like the think tank set in Professor Chronotis' room, which actually turned out to be a TARDIS. It's control room. The animation was quite well done, to say the least. I do think the animators were able to capture what Douglas Adams envisioned Shada to be, if it actually finished filming. And I think the same team that animated the Power of the Daleks in 2016 actually animated Shada, and I liked how they were able to transition between live action and the animated scenes. It seemed very seamless. And I think there was one part I liked when, I think it was at the beginning of the story, it pretty much camera started panning to the sky, and then when it came down, it was all animated, and we saw Chris cycling through Cambridge. And I think this is when obviously the Doctor Romana were going to see Chronotis for the first time, and that transition, and I like that transition as well. The script was very well done, and the production and the direction by Pennant Roberts was quite good. And I also think Shada has a very good plot. I like how It pretty much adds more into the Time Lord mythology by featuring Shada, which was a prison that the Time Lords made where they imprisoned like other Time Lords, I think. And that's where the Time Lord criminal Sally Avon was supposedly held, but it turned out that Sally Avon was actually Professor Chronotis, and I think that was a very good twist, and I pretty much expected it was him when he pretty much implanted the knowledge of the TARDIS into Claire's brain, and when it was explained that Sally Avon was able to do so, that was a bit of a giveaway, so to speak. And I did like Skygro's motives of wanting to create his own version of the universe by stealing people's brain. It was quite sinister and it was also quite scary as well. And I think Shada had some very good moments, such as Chris trying to x-ray the book he took from Chronotis, and the book actually destroyed the x-ray machine, and he was just very bewildered by it. I also like the scene when he was actually trying to read through the book. This was an animated scene, so while he was flicking through the book, the clock on the wall behind him was also moving as well, so that was quite cool, and that was pretty well animated. I also like the scene when the Doctor was trying to cycle away from Scarecrow's mind space, and he ended up passing a boys' choir. The song they were singing was quite good, and I really liked their voices, and that led to the part 2 cliffhanger when the Doctor was unable to escape, and then one of the spirits was like pretty much coming towards him. I also like the scene where Sally Avon was revealed to have been in Chronotis, even though it's short lived, and this was happening when Claire entered his room, and then obviously Chronotis was assumed to have been dead, but then Claire accidentally brought him back to life, and it looks like Chronotis was just sleeping there with his like outfit, and that was a cool scene, so to speak. And I also liked how he pretty much put the TARDIS knowledge into her brain. And I actually liked Chronotis' TARDIS, and it was pretty much represented by a door. The exterior was pretty much was much like a door, but then the control room was pretty much like his living room, just with like hidden layers and stuff. I also like the scene when his TARDIS took off and Wilkin was trying to enter the room, but then he opened the door and there was pretty much nothing there. His face looked quite bewildered. I think that was a very funny scene. I also like the scene that was added at the end of the 2017 release. Dr. Romano were in the TARDIS talking about Chronotis and how Romana said that the Chronotis seemed like a very nice old man, and then the Doctor was quite stunned by Romana saying this because he himself wondered, like, what if someone recognized him as a Doctor and they said the Doctor, although, ooh, is that the Doctor? He looked like a nice old man. And obviously this was filmed in the present day, and present day Tom Baker, and Lala Ward was on scene. I think she was talking from somewhere, and I thought that was very well acted scene. It actually reminded me of when Tom Baker returned in the Day of the Doctor when he was talking to the 11th Doctor about, I think, I can't remember, I think it was painting, but it was a very nice scene, and it pretty much was very reminiscent, and Shada pretty much made that scene reminiscent of Day of the Doctor. On to the performances. There were live action performances featuring all the characters, and the animation performances in which some of the surviving actors from the live action return. Both were quite good. I think Tom Baker was great in the story. He had great chemistry with Lala Ward, and it pretty much helped the story of Shada a little bit because it pretty much shows how strong they are as a duo as they have in the stories and the other stories this season. I also like and he also does return to provide his voice for the animation. He did a very good job there as well. I did like the part where this is also animated. This is an animated scene where he was reading from the book to Skygra, and he was actually reading Ancient Gallifreyan, which was pretty much Tom Baker speaking gibberish. He actually ad-libbed, in the part of the story the Doctor actually calls Chris Bristol, and actually Tom Baker actually ad-libbed that line, and I thought that was quite fun. That was a very funny moment. Even the Doctor actually calls him Bristol like a couple of times, but no, it wasn't as constant in the story. I also definitely think that Tom Baker never lost his touch as the Fourth Doctor because of that was the closing scene he did in the end of Shada, the 2017 Shada. Lala Wood did a great job, and she also returns to the animation. She does get to do a fair bit in the story, such as helping Claire to help the Doctor trying to create a mini vortex for him to try and get back to his own TARDIS from Chronotis' TARDIS. Yes, and I do like how the Romana was able to save the Doctor from the Mind Spears. I thought that was a very good moment for Romana. I think this is actually one of the very few times I think where we actually see Romana actually operating the TARDIS. Yes, and other than that, Romana doesn't really do much of anything, because she's pretty much captured by Scarecrow, and she pretty much has to operate the TARDIS for him, and then that was just I do wish Ramona did a little bit more in the story, but hmm. Kanan was okay. He doesn't do a whole lot. He does pretty much shoot the Krogs for most of the story. He in the live action, in the live action and the animation, David Briley doesn't return for the animation because the actor died in 2008. But the animation still featured Kanan, but he didn't really speak. And when he did speak, he was only like saying affirmative master or master mistress, and I think those was just old clips of Briley speaking. So on to the side cast. They were quite minimal. They all did a very good job, and I think they all returned for the animation, except for the ones that were not featured in the animation. First off, we had Chris Parsons. He was featured in the live action and the animation. He was a postgrad student at Cambridge University and worked with Chronotis. He borrowed the book, which was called The Worshipful and the Ancient Law of Gallifrey from without Chronotis, without knowing what it was. And it actually piqued his curiosity because of how strange it was, because he was pretty much making things feel weird, and obviously how it actually destroyed his X-ray machine. I really liked Chris Parsons. I think he too would have been a great companion, and definitely better than Adric for sure. But because I think he had a great rapport with Tom Baker, and he aided in stopping Skagra. And we also had Claire Keatley. She was a student at Cambridge University, and she was called by Chris to look at the book he borrowed from Chronotis. And when Chronotis' TARDIS departed from Cambridge, which caused it to break down, and the Chronotis actually asked her to try and fix the TARDIS with him, but she didn't know what to do. So Chronotis decided to implant knowledge of the TARDIS into her brain so she can help fix the TARDIS. And I thought that pretty much made her more of an interesting character. I do wish she did a little bit more, but I think that was a good scene when she actually fixed the TARDIS. So I thought she was a good character as well, and she also returns for the animation. You have Professor Chronotis, formerly known as Sally Avon. So Sally Avon was a renegade Time Lord criminal, and he was sent to Shada because he was abusing his mind control powers. But he ended up escaping, retired on Earth, and became a professor at Cambridge University. And he was there for quite a few decades, and he met the Doctor before. And obviously, he took the Worshipful and Ancient Law of Gallifrey book and kept it in his library, which obviously Chris took. And Chronotis was initially killed by Skagra by his Mind Spear, and he was on his Lost Regeneration as well. But he was brought back to life thanks to Claire, and that's where he pretty much implanted his knowledge of the TARDIS into her brain. And when Chronotis revealed he was Sally Avon, once again he has his mind taken, but it pretty much fixes itself when the Doctor was able to stop Skagra's plans. He was a very good character, and he was definitely one of my favourite one-off Time Lords. He appeared in the live action and the animation, but the actor died sometime before the animation, so I think they also got previous clips from other stories, because I know the actor does apparently appear in The Keeper of Traken, and so they pretty much use clips from that for this story. Well, for the animation, so to speak. But he was well acted in the live action. So in Wilkin, he wasn't in the animation, but he did appear in all the live action scenes when he was featured in. He was supposed to have a very good memory. He was an alright character. I did like how he was telling the police officer about Chronotis' room vanishing, and when he was about to show the officer, the room apparently was intact and everyone was having tea. I thought it was a very funny scene. And of course, he had Caldera. He was a neurologist whose mind was stolen by Skagra at the start of the story in the think tank area. So when the Doctor and Chris arrived at think tank with Skagra's ship, they pretty much found Caldera, and he was telling them what Skagra was trying to do, and I think the Doctor pretty much tried to use tried to do a mini mind what Skagra was trying to do. But I think it pretty much gave Chris a bit more confidence, and that was a good scene, so to speak. And our big bad of Shada was Skagra. He was from Dronid, and his motive was to try and steal the mind of geniuses and other people using mind space to create his own version of the universe called Universal Mind. He was in the think tank space station because he left Dronid, and he pretty much killed everyone during the think tank space station by absorbing their minds. And he pretty much decided to head to Cambridge to try and find the worshipful ancient law of Gallifrey, which had the key to Shada, and he needed to gain access to Shada because Sally Avon was imprisoned there, and so you can pretty much steal his mind to pretty much build his own universe. But obviously, Chris took the book, so that didn't really affect the plan anyway, because he was still able to get a hold of the book, but he needed to try and find out where Shada was, which he was able to do so thanks to Romana. And so after the Doctor pretty much stopped him, his plan failed, and he was pretty much trapped in his ship. And I think he was a very good villain. He was also very well acted, and the actor does actually return for the animation as well. And I liked how cold he was as a villain. He didn't need to be as shouty as other villains. He didn't need to be like psychotic. He was a very cool, calm, and calculated villain. And I really liked that about. One thing that really did put me off was that awful outfit he was wearing, and that very weird bag he was carrying. But I think this is what the writers actually intended it to be. So, but it was still quite ridiculous. So I think the thoughts of Shada, not as much as other stories, but they're still existent. And it was pretty obvious that the 2017 animated version of Shada was pretty much following the original 6-part script that was written, and it does drag a bit, especially when Skygro captured Roman. I think that part really dragged, and I thought I was just literally counting the minutes, seeing how long we left, because stuff was happening, but it was a very big drag. And it didn't really help that when the Doctor, Chris, and K9 arrived at the think tank, I think that was just purely filler. I think it was just there to make it a 6-parter. And he also explained that the Krogs, I think they were Skagra's henchmen. They didn't really have anything important to do in the story other than K9 just blasting them. If they were removed, I don't think that the story would have been affected too much. And also, they never really explained what happened to the book after Skygro was defeated. I assume Chronotis took it back, but I don't think it was ever explained. So to conclude this review, I think Shada is a legendary story because it was unfinished filming, but it does have that status and the situation. I really admire the fact that there are different versions of Shada that exist and that can be enjoyed. And can be enjoyed. And it's not a perfect story, but I do think it's a definitive highlight for the Tom Baker era and a great way to end the Graham Williams era of Doctor Who and the 1970s era, this story was actually filmed in the 70s. Well, it was filmed in the 70s and it was intended to have aired in the 1980s if it was completed. So Shada probably would have been the first complete story of the 1980s. So I give Shada an 8.5 out of 10. So that's it for season 17. Join me where I review all 6 stories of the season. Thanks for watching. Please let me know what your thoughts of Shada if you've seen the story. And please comment and subscribe to my other social media networks below. Until then, see you later.